How's it going, everybody? This is Sarah here, and as you see, I kind of starting to improve my setup a little bit. I now have a green screen. You don't have to see the crib in the back of the room anymore and the blinds and everything, so trying to make it a little bit more classy for you guys. Now, the purpose for this video is going to be talking about the strike spot. In this video, there was so much information that was kind of given to us in rapid succession. I actually missed some of the pieces at first. So I kind of went back, I took some notes and tried to really dive into what was said in the video and what we can kind of expect. Because right now, as the game sits, it's kind of boring. There's not a lot to do. I've been hammering them saying, hey, we need some PvE content. DC Worlds Collide has this type of content in there. Marvel Mystic Mayhem's coming. Marvel Rivals is out. And they needed to try to improve a lot of the game modes and get the excitement back into Marvel Strike Force. And Ryan Jacobson basically said during the interview, we need to put the fun back in the game. So let's go ahead and talk about what happened in this interview. So there was a summary as far as the 7th anniversary, basically events. There's going to end up being rewards, kind of what they typically do every year. He did give some additional news for next month on here. And there was, of course, the interview portion, which is what the main thing that we're going to be diving into on this. So for this interview, for the 7th anniversary, March is usually the month that they have these anniversary events where they kind of give out so many rewards. And I believe it was last year was the lackluster one where they didn't really tell us there's going to be the big reward at the end of the mail. They gave that out and it kind of made up for it, but it kind of put the bad taste in the mouth as far as the events that were leading up to that. So they needed to do better communication with the anniversary events, which is kind of what they talked about, saying they learned from the past regarding the anniversary. There's going to be the events, the rewards, new costumes, which we're going to take kind of a little detour into that portion. The new UI, I actually missed that the first time they were talking about this. I'm really curious what kind of UI changes or new UI that's coming to the game for this. But I think with the changes they've been making and trying to pivot to make the game look crisper with the new graphics update they did, the UI is going to be something that's probably going to help out the game to try to keep it fresh, keep it up to date, hopefully bring new people in and hopefully navigate, because right now there's so much scrolling whenever there's the flash events or the milestones. It's just scrolling and clicking the red dots. I'm hoping they try to solve that type of issue. There's also going to be the Howard the Duck narrative, which if you follow the story in it, that's going to be cool. Howard the Duck's a pretty entertaining comic book character, so I'm hoping they do that portion justice. Now, as far as the costumes, on the splash screen, we see that it's basically going to be the black and gold costumes, kind of what they did with Deathpool, which is actually a very cool costume. So on here, it looks like there's going to be an Oath, a Jean Grey, which actually looks pretty sharp. I don't know if I want to stick to the comic accurate one or not. Old Man Logan, Nightcrawler. We have Captain Marvel and Spider Weaver, which Weaver looks beautiful. I actually really like that design. I'm definitely going to be using that one. Oath, she already had like that dark blue costume, so it's just going more in the black direction. Old Man Logan looks like a boss though, and of course Nightcrawler. So I'm pretty happy as far as what we're going to be getting for the look of these, and it looks like we're going to be getting that gold shield medic character on here. They keep trying to push the shield medic, which is pretty entertaining. Now on here, this is something that I found very interesting. They were talking about doing the Battle World iterations. Basically, they launched Battle World on the test server. It was not received well. We gave so much feedback saying, hey, these changes need to happen. When we had the phone call, even like the player voice or the player experience, whatever, there was more than just the envoys on the call, and everybody was in unanimous decision. These changes need to happen. Otherwise, this isn't going to be good. It came out, and of course it flopped. They brought it back. They made the nodes better, but I think they could even improve on the nodes for what we had on those 3 days. The changes they made to Null, I was not impressed with. Making it nerf on the bleeds took away so much theory crafting. I didn't even stream any of the Battle World because it was just kind of as far as the content goes. So what they said on here is there's changes being worked on before the next iteration, and they're crafting the boss fights. And the next one is going to be a hero. So it looks like they're going to start doing more instead of the be bad evil guy, the BBEG for the gamers and all that stuff. It's going to be a main hero that we're going to be fighting against. And it's going to be a relevant character joining the MCU this year. Now, that basically tells me if we end up jumping over to what's coming out this year for Marvel, we have the Daredevil Born Again. We already have a Daredevil game. We're not going to be fighting him. There's the Thunderbolts. Right away, Sentry is the first thing that comes to mind for this. Ironheart, I don't think we're going to be fighting Ironheart. Fantastic Four, first steps. The only one I could see that we'd be fighting on there is going to be the new Silver Surfer, because they don't have Norrin Rad. They have the female version for the Silver Surfer that's going to be in that. I don't think they'd make us fight that. We have the Eyes of the Wakanda series. I don't know what that's going to be. Marvel Zombies is coming back. Wonder Man. So I don't know if we're going to be fighting Wonder Man, because one of the things they said is this is going to end up aiming for, I believe, September is what they said. I don't think they'd end up pushing that to come out before the TV series on Disney Plus. So I'm banking that it's going to end up being Sentry. Now with Sentry on here, he is a very, very fascinating, interesting comic book character. He's very powerful, Superman level being who has a dark side to him, which is the Void. So if they can do this boss fight justice, this is going to be exciting, because Null personally was kind of a letdown. I'm still looking forward to the character. Very excited. I love the battlegrounds that they put in for the Null boss fight. But overall, I just kind of felt the boss fight was kind of lacking. You just go in, you hit auto. There really wasn't any theory crafting because they took the bleed team away. So I want them to lean more into a theory crafting as opposed to something else happening with that. Now, yeah, so they did say Battle World 2 is aiming for September as far as that goes. Hopefully they can kind of keep the schedule on that, because something else they ended up saying is how they kind of held on to the Battle World for too long. By the time it kind of got to the players' hands, the hype kind of died down on it. The thing I want them to focus on, if this ends up being Sentry, is give interesting boss mechanics. Give phases on this guy. This guy is a very powerful being that could just wipe out people with the snap of a finger when he goes into the Void. So maybe have it to where he transitions every quarter bar of his health. He goes from Sentry to Void, Sentry, Void, and as that happens, there could be battlefield effects. So there's a battlefield effect on the Sentry side. When he ends up getting knocked down to quarter health, goes to Void, put the battlefield effect on the enemy side. Bounce it back and forth. Give us something that makes us pay attention during the boss fight so we don't just hit auto on it. I really hope they do the whole transition into the Void, because that would be so cool of a mechanic. However, I don't know if they're going to, because Void is kind of its own being as well. I could see them having two separate characters for that, but I hope they kind of play in to that aspect of it if it is going to be Sentry for this boss fight. Now, during this interview, he said the most exciting thing for 2025 is going to be a new game mode that's going to be coming out Q1 to Q2. This is going to end up being something where it's a roguelike video game or gameplay portion of it. And they also want to learn from Battle World, basically try to get it out to the players' hands within this Q1, Q2 timeframe. Right now, we're about to enter March, so Q1's almost over. So I think this is going to be coming out maybe in April or May is kind of what I'm hoping. Kind of keep us entertained and everything. Now, something very interesting about what this rogue gameplay is. Roguelike is a style of role-playing game traditionally characterized by a dungeon crawl through procedurally generated levels, turn-based gameplay, grid-based movement, and permanent death on the characters. The most famous one I could kind of think of is kind of a MOBA as well, which is League of Legends. That's very much like a roguelike game, to where you have your one character, you go out, you do your battles, you pick up some loot, you die, you respawn back, you build up that character, then by the time you finish the level, it's basically gone. So I think that's kind of what they're going to be leaning into. And I want to give a shout out to Bendable Straws. This was something he brought up back in December, basically about 2 to 3 months ago. on the Marvel Strike Force Instagram page, there was this little video where you see Deadpool kind of running around doing his hack and slash. I'll turn the sound off for that. And both of us was in the impression of, when is Marvel Strike Force doing these fake games? I don't know if this is going to be what they're kind of looking at for this roguelike style of gameplay. And then they kind of transitions into the actual gameplay where they use Weapon X. Again, this was from December 13th. I don't know if that's kind of something that they were looking into doing, and that's what this turned into. I honestly don't know, but I definitely wanted to bring this to your attention because I thought this was fascinating that they had something like this in the works, and now they announced this roguelike gameplay. So let me know what you guys think, if that is something that you think this is what they're going to lean into, what you guys' thought process on this is. It sounds interesting. If they can execute this right, League of Legends is a very big game. Now, I have played some games to where there's like grid-based system where you kind of crawl through it, and it doesn't pique my attention as much. Like, I'll play it for a little bit, then I just kind of forget to play it, and then I end up dropping the game. So I'm hoping they can get the execution right on this one. Now, they talked about doing drastic changes to the seasons or ages. The most successful one, in my opinion, was Age of Apocalypse. How they had it to where each legendary was the horseman. They had awesome build-up leading up to those horsemen. And then you had the whole reveal of Apocalypse and the sagas. Now, they talked about how the sagas, they don't know if that's what they're going to do as far as this ends up going or anything like that. But with the roguelike gameplay, so apparently I'm going back to that again. With the roguelike gameplay, they talked about using different and unique characteristic, like characters. Every time you go in, you build up your roster. It gives you new ways to play the roster. They talked about having new rewards in there, or having rewards in there. I'm wondering if that's going to be how we start getting maybe gear 20 pieces in there, maybe the orbs. They always like to have these new games and then kind of get people funneled into them, get the engagement going and everything. They did that with Cosmic Crucible with the Dark Diamonds. They end up doing it with the new raids. Every time they come out, they put the new pieces in there. Now, yeah, so for the Age of X. So the Age of X is going to finish up. They don't know if there's going to end up being a traditional Dark Dimension, or if it's going to be a unique thing, kind of like what the Age of Apocalypse was. But they want the experience to feel different, which I'm all for. They want it to be different than the traditional Dark Dimension on here. So that leads me to believe that they're making final touches to it, and they can kind of set it up in two different ways. So I don't know if it's going to be a node-based like Dark Dimension, and then they can just break it up into the sagas like they did with the Age of Apocalypse or what. I'm very curious how they are going to get the execution for this, because I think it's important to kind of get a strong wrap on the Age of X. That way, when they end up doing the next age, which we are going to talk about here, the next season aims to be episodic. So what this means is there's going to be 3-month chapters, and then once that chapter ends, they go into the next chapter of it. And this is going to have a drastic difference than what we're used to. It's going to give you a better sense of immersion. Goal settings for players definitely caught my ear when they mentioned that in there. There's going to be the event structures and introducing global events. That right there says a lot to me. They're trying to make it to where this next age is going to be a global event for Marvel Strike Force. So if you're unfamiliar with that, it basically means everybody that's usually on the server or Marvel Strike Force is going to be working towards these milestones or events. And that sounds very cool. It definitely excites me to try to have basically like the high-end players can kind of help out the new players to make sure they get their rewards. That way nobody's kind of left behind. This is very exciting, and it tells me they're looking back again to try to bring the excitement back to the game, which is what Ryan Jacobson said. Now, the next age is going to be the Age of Annihilus, and they're going to stick to a core narrative for him, whereas with the Age of X that we had, it kind of started that way, where they end up using Old Man Logan, kind of that whole storyline. There was a weird pivot with Odin on there. Then they went back to it with Shadow King, which kind of makes sense because of the storyline between Professor X and Shadow King. So they had that weird deviants, pivots in there, if you will, of the Odin kind of mythic character on there. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Annihilus, he is a interdimensional insectoid conqueror and tyrant hailing from the negative zone. He's a very cosmic level threat, worthy of being this type of being that we're going to be facing into for a full age. He had a very interesting comic arc in there, very powerful being, and I'm actually looking forward to Annihilus being in the game. Not many people are fully aware of what he's capable of. So Ryan Jacobson, his final thoughts. He was very transparent, and I applaud him for this because not a lot of people would end up doing this. There's always ups and downs, and he was very transparent, talking about finding the fun again. That means that he's definitely aware that the Marvel Strike Force game this past year was not successful. The biggest thing that the players had to look forward to was Battle World, and they kind of dropped the ball on that. Then the PvE events, the pocket dimensions, the towers. Towers are usually fun. The pocket dimensions, they either gear it way too difficult for people or way too easy for people. So they're trying to find the fun, which again, I applaud him for being that transparent with this, because it was very frustrating for me as a player or somebody that spends on the game, and I start questioning, why am I spending on this game when it's not fun? I'm just kind of pushing buttons, getting the new characters, and then wait for the next character, wait for the next character. Oh, there's a legendary, let's do this. So finding the fun again, I'm very happy that he said this. The releasing of the overall roadmap for things to come. So we're going to be getting a roadmap on here, which again, 2024, we didn't have a roadmap for the longest time. The last roadmap, I believe they talked about moments, still never got moments. And he is open to feedback from the community and the player voice and the player experience. So whatever the feedback is, keep hammering your envoys, your player voice, wherever, YouTube videos, open to feedback. So whatever the feedback is, we will be happy to pass it along. But this was a very, very impressive Strike Spot video. Really curious what your guys' thoughts are. I think this means that they're going to start moving into a good direction, and they're aware of a lot of the mistakes that they made. They're going to try to fix it. And with the new game mode, I really want to know how they're going to end up playing that, because if it's anything like the video that I brought up where it came from their own Instagram, that kind of says a lot. Let me pull this back up. So it kind of went into the overhead portion of the gameplay, and then it went into, let me hit there it is. So it's like an overhead view of it. You kind of play your characters. You can see that they put time in this. So I have to wonder if this is what the roguelike gameplay is that they were talking about. But definitely open as far as what you guys' thoughts are. Let me know in the comments below. If you did like this video, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, have a wonderful rest of the day.